Peace, peace, peace. You know, today there's a couple things I want to talk about, but one thing that was sitting on my mind as I'm sitting here, and it's kind of late. Um, Sometimes when you run a company or when you're working hard to run a company, you have to stay late. You have to put in some extra work, and you can't really ask other people to do it because that's what happens when you're in upper management, when you're a CEO or an executive director, um, or even a manager or supervisor. Sometimes you have to put in those extra hours because that's where the responsibility falls on. And before you can even ask somebody else to do certain things, you have to be willing to do it yourself, right? Um, and then you also got to take care of yourself, right? So there's a balance of self care and dedication. So when it comes to self care, you also have to be able to listen to what other people say because sometimes they can see you from a different angle. You don't see yourself, right? So other people might see you and say, you might need some rest or here, have some water. Or, did you eat? And you're in autopilot. You didn't notice it. Um, and so, there's a balance and there's multiple layers to stories that we have to learn from. So it brings me to another story. All right, so peace, peace, peace. You already know what this is. Now build, representing building block. And we laying it down piece by piece, brick by brick. We building a foundation, right? So this story right here is about a mother and her son and an elder, right? So there was a mother who lived in a village, and she had a son who was a pretty good son, pretty wise son. Pretty, he listened, he helped, but he had one major thing that used to bother her. He loved to eat sweets. Now, I know a lot of us we have a sweet tooth, and some people kind of do overdo it, right? Well, this particular person, it kind of leans into when we overindulge into things. He overdid it. He didn't want to eat fish. He didn't want to eat poultry. He didn't want to eat beef. He didn't want to eat vegetables. He didn't want to eat fruit. He wanted to eat sweets. And she, as an elder, as his mother, understood that eventually it was going to catch up to him. But he refused to listen. So she knew that there was a great elder that was going to come into um, a few villages over, and everyone revered the elders. So this is another lesson. We understand that we have to honor and respect our elders because they carry wisdom of life. And in some traditions, they're on the cusp of being back with the ancestors and the creators. So we want to always honor our ancestors, just like we honor the babies who just left the realm of the ancestors and the creator, right? But that's a whole nother bill. So boom, this elder, and he's like in some cultures like the Dalai Lama, right? In some cultures, he's like a Buddha. In some cultures, you get it. He's revered. He's respected. He's a great elder. And so he comes to this other village, and she knows of it. So they hurry up and they get the chores done, the work done, and they gather up their belongings because it's going to be a journey. So to get to this place, this destination, you have to go through these neighboring villages. You have to go through the woods or forest. You have to go through some waters. A little hiking may be involved, but you can get there. And so they took this trek. Well, she was determined, and he was in awe because he gets a chance to meet this great one. So they finally get there, and there's a line. Now, I don't know if you've ever been shopping, to go grab the new iPhone or the pair of Jordans or whatever it is. It's a big thing out there. But they get into the line, and it took a while to finally get to him. And when they finally get to him, she asked him, she's like, Father, because that's an endearing or respectful term, Baba. Um, can you tell my son to stop eating sweets? So the elder looks at her, caring, lovingly. Then he looks over at the young man, eyes piercing into his. And after it seemed like it was a long time, it really wasn't. He says, "Come back in 3 weeks." Now she was a little puzzled by that response, but of course you don't really question someone of this great magnitude of wisdom, so she thanked him for his time and humbly took her son's hand, and they went, right? So they go about their business, and for at least 2 weeks and 6 days, right? Because now they got to start early to go back on his trek. But of course, he's not going to stay in one spot for that long. So he travels out a little bit further. So when they go to meet up with him again, they have to go a little bit further. So if they had to go through 3 villages, they might have to go through 6 this time. If they had to go through one river, maybe they had to go through 2 or 3. Um, if they had to go through one part of the forest or the brush, they may have to go way deeper, or maybe 2, maybe over a mountain. Bottom line is, the journey for this said outcome was a lot more serious this time, right? So they finally get to him, and Alon's there again, and the sun's beating down on them again. But they get there, right? So they're there, and they're in line, and they finally make it up to him. So finally, she makes it there, and she looks, and she's, Father, I don't know if you remember, but a few weeks ago, and he cuts her short, and he says, "Of course I remember you, daughter. You had the young man, and he wanted to stop eating sweets." Well, he didn't really want to stop eating sweets. You wanted him to stop eating sweets. And she said, "Yes." And she was so grateful that he even remembered who she was, right? So he looks at the young man, grabs him by his hand, looks him in the eye, serious eye contact. He says, "Young man, son, stop eating sweets." And of course, revered, respected. He says, "Okay." And from that moment, decided to stop eating sweets. So the mother's grateful. She's happy. And she takes the son and she walks about 2, 3 steps, and then she stops. She's puzzled. She's confused. She's starting to get a little angry. So she turns around and she looks at the elder, and she says, I don't want to be disrespectful, but we traveled through several villages and over the hills and through the waters. Um, we missed days of work. We took great sacrifice to get here, and you told him, you told us to go back for 3 weeks and come back, and you could have told him this the first time. Why didn't you just tell him that 3 weeks ago? And so the elder smiles and looks at her and says, "I had to stop eating sweets first." See, he couldn't ask the young man to do something that he hadn't done. Furthermore, the young man also had to respect the journey. He learned to travel. He went through what he had to go through in order to get to the destination, get the knowledge, retain the knowledge, and then bring it back. It's not always just the point of information. You also gain what you gain from that journey. Um, when I deal with guys who are in recovery from a different cane, not sugar cane, but sometimes it's cocaine, right? And they don't listen to a person who's in active addiction telling them to stop. They have to listen to somebody who's done it, or someone who had enough fortitude not to pick up. So there's layers to it. There's levels to it. And so the moral is, one, be the message that you bring, right? Don't tell people to do something, show them. Two, be willing to travel and work to go get that information, earn it, right? And three, be willing to find out. Don't let that stuff fester. Um, don't resent the elder. He was wise enough not to just tell him. He had to conquer that himself, and for her to assume that he had already beat that, she was foolish. But for her to ask, at least allowed that not to beat her up on the way back. So hopefully, this gem that I'm sharing resonates with you in some way, and you may even be able to pull out a couple more lessons out of it. Maybe the bonding between the mother and the son. Maybe the question of where was the father? Why the village? What was the significance of the woods? All that good stuff, right? But in any event, that's it. I hope you enjoyed the story. And as always, we build from the foundation up. And it's always love, building block. Peace.